When you think of Nintendo and their many storied franchises, your mind probably doesn't immediately go to first-person shooting. Fair or unfair, the company's enjoyed a reputation for being fairly family-friendly, even with the Nintendo Switch. And they definitely take advantage of that reputation to carve a unique place for themselves in the industry as everyone's favorite second console. But Nintendo's never been shy about shooters, whether you go back to the old light gun days of Gunman's Alley or the N64 collaborations with Rare, and of course, Metroid Prime, whose fourth game definitely, certainly, absolutely exists, and we'll be playing it with our gamer hands in 2025, or 2026, or 20XX. But Metroid Prime wasn't the only first or second party shooter on the Gamecube. nSpace? No, this one takes place in France, and it's a paranormal sci-fi shooter involving ghostly possessions called Geist. The developer nSpace has an interesting history. They came into existence via funding from Sony, who needed studio manpower to help muscle their way into the mindshare of the blossoming fifth generation of gaming consoles with the original PlayStation. nSpace had worked on games like Tiger Shark, Die Hard Trilogy 2, and that weird Tomb Raider-style Duke Nukem game. Prior to their closure in 2016, they had worked primarily as a porting house, creating unique portable versions of console games for the Nintendo DS. This included games like Star Wars The Force Unleashed, Call of Duty Black Ops, and GoldenEye 007, so they really didn't get to flex their muscles on their own projects all that often. And when they did, the results were not always stellar, as was the case for Heroes of Ruin and Bug Riders: The Race of Kings? So I really didn't know what to expect going in when I started Geist for the first time. This game had its own path of development hell, as Nintendo and nSpace clashed over what the focus of the game should be. And as I played through the 9 chapters that make up the game's campaign, that war is kind of waged on the player themselves, as the game shifts back and forth between an action shooter and a more puzzly experience. You play as John Ramey, a scientist traveling with a counter-terrorist outfit to rescue a friend of his from the mysterious Volks Corporation, who is currently opening rifts to a demon world and experimenting on separating the soul from the human body. After this rescue effort goes awry, John becomes the next unwilling experiment, but unlike the others, he survives this experiment and becomes a poltergeist, capable of possessing anyone and anything he needs in order to rescue his friend, again, and figure out how to stop Volks. Compared to Metroid Prime, Geist is far more linear. I'd say a close comparison would be Half-Life, as you're constantly moving forward on a journey through a large compound, fighting a sort of alien-like invasion in addition to security forces, though this invasion is obviously far more demonic in nature. Even Dr. Breen is here! The primary gameplay loop, if there is one, mixes traditional first-person shooting with possession puzzles that involve hopping into various objects and then using them to scare people until they glow red and become suitable hosts for you to take over. Now I know The Haunting starring Poltergeist, and I'm a major Ghost Trick stan, but Geist may be the first game I've played that let me possess a dog food bowl and shake the food around. You can also slip through little cracks in walls, and sometimes you might find a collectible along the way that unlocks special multiplayer maps. Hey, remember unlocks? Remember when you could unlock neat bonuses for finding secrets, before we as a society became obsessed with FOMO and had to have everything all at once before bonuses became DLC and $200 collector's editions? Okay, sorry, that's enough fogey millennial ranting. Be sure to check out my Steam Next Fest bonus video this weekend, only for paying members of my Patreon! The visuals are a bit of a mixed bag. As a retro head, I of course have nostalgia for the crunchier pixels of the 5th and 6th generations, but I don't have nostalgia for the overly aggressive V-Sync. I render my videos at 30 frames per second because of technical reasons, so you won't notice it as much in the footage. But this game frequently switches from 60 to 30 to 60 to 30 back and forth, and it's really annoying. Had the game just stuck to 30, I don't think there'd be any issue, but having the small glimpses of 60 make it feel like something is off. Aside from that, I love your current guy being part of the UI. The goofy-looking run cycle reminds me of Alucard in Symphony of the Night. The music is extant. It's the kind of music you'd expect to hear in a serious but low-budget shooter of the era, but a far, far cry from a Nintendo soundtrack. Having played a lot of PS1 games this year, it was nice to have a shooter automatically default to the standard twin-stick scheme, but don't expect the game to feel like a modern gun game. Almost immediately I had to go into the options and turn off inverted pitch, and as a nice bonus the game supports widescreen, so I turned that on as well. You're welcome! Even still, you have a slow turning speed and even slower vertical look, so don't expect to pull off any sick no-scopes here. And there's little to no cover, and only some characters have gun sights, so we're talking some pretty basic pointing and tapping here. Of course, shooting is only half the game, as other parts will have you exploring as hosts that have minimal ways of protecting themselves. Like the mechanic who only gets a rebar gun halfway through your time using him, or Anna who spends a lot of time with a fire extinguisher before it becomes action o'clock and you get kitted out. You can also occasionally possess animals, like rats to go through little mouse tunnels or bats to ascend vertical chasms. I liked possessing this computer and scaring someone with pop-up ads, or going into a mirror and warping someone's reflection. These are obviously scripted moments and there's no real immersive sandbox to play in, it's all required progression, but I still enjoyed them each time. That constant variety makes a stronger case for the game than the typical run-and-gun shenanigans, and Shigeru Miyamoto was the one who suggested them, so I gotta say, Nintendo's coming out the wiser of these two parties so far. Can you believe it? Nintendo might know more about game design than the developers of Mary-Kate and Ashley Magical Mystery Mall? Okay, I'm being a little uncharitable here, it's still nSpace's game, but from my modern retrospective perspective, the puzzle and adventure moments are a lot more novel and interesting than the generic shooter gameplay. It's not that there's no attempted variety on the action side, there's a motorcycle chase, a timed sequence of destroying these rocket towers, a wave defense section, but without much in the way of enemy variety aside from these Inviso monsters, these sequences inevitably feel humdrum. Still, I appreciated the game's efforts to constantly try different things with every new level. In the end, I think Geist is fun, but reflects its troubled development cycle, a conflict of visions between two companies that results in a worse product. But that doesn't mean it isn't fun or creative, it's just that a lot of that fun and creativity trades places a bit too often with by-the-numbers action. If it's less fun to shoot at enemies than it is to possess a grenade, roll it over to an enemy and explode it, then the enemy encounter should have had more of a playground or sandbox design to them. The game ends up being a strange lost curio of a generation where Nintendo wanted to prove to people that it could make more adult and sophisticated experiences. And ironically, it's the most childlike elements of play in Geist that shine the brightest. If the Switch Online service ever gets a Gamecube section, maybe more people will get to experience this weird little game. But honestly, I don't think that has a ghost of a chance. Thanks for enduring that stupid pun I just made, and making it through the video as well. My posting schedule's been slightly erratic, but I'm going to do my best to right this ship over the next couple of weeks. You can look forward to more videos this month, like a look at Jumping Flash, and Marvelous Another Treasure Island, possibly another indie look as well. Like a lot of creators, I've moved from Twitter to Blue Sky, so you'll find updates from me there. That's all for now, and until next time, you'll find me in another castle.